So I want to take the conversation into the next phase of this interview, which is more of a brainstorming session.
Okay.
As you know, I'm on this mission to create the healthiest home in the world,
Oh, that's extraordinary.
and I'm. This is why I'm here right now, interviewing you to gather information about this specific topic that you're heading up in your research. So the whole point of this next phase of the conversation is to brainstorm, come up with some hypotheses, and try to walk away from this table where with both of us having, maybe more questions to explore and to test, in our own respective practices. So I've read your work, or at least one of your books, and listened to many of your interviews, and I have a few ideas because in my mind, the goal would be that the plumbing system, if we think of architecture, there is the architecture of the human body, right? And there's all these different systems within the human body. Likewise, we have the architecture of our homes, and in the homes there are many different systems. And I would see the plumbing system as like the circulatory system, of the home. And if there are all these health benefits that still many to be researched and discovered, but it seems like at the very least we can say that structured water is foundational to health, because water is foundational to health, and we talked about all that. My goal would be that all of the water coming out of all of the fixtures, in the home would be structured. One of my friends is a regenerative farmer in Tennessee, and he did an experiment with structured water. After studying a bit of your work, he had set up a system. He had 2 greenhouses, one with just regular well water. Keep in mind, this is a regenerative farm, so a very highly productive farm, like very healthy soils. Everything is amazing. Some of the highest microbial health in the soils, some of the highest. I've seen him grow fruit trees from seed to fruit, in like 15 months fruiting, when it takes, that many years, to grow normally. And he has quite literally the Garden of Eden out there. I like to think he comes across more as a mad scientist than a farmer, because he's constantly doing experiments. One of those experiments was on structured water, and he had one greenhouse with regular well water from his property, and the other greenhouse he fed structured water, and that was the only variable. Everything else remained constant to the best of the ability you could have in a farm, right? And what he found was that the greenhouse with structured water produced twice as much as the greenhouse without structured water.
No surprise.
Which is astronomical to consider that something as foundational, but also as simple, it seems, as just structuring water before feeding your plants could double your production of your crops. When he said that, I was told, I was like, we need that in homes, because what does that mean for our health, right? If it's doing that for plants, if all this preliminary research and the work that you're doing, and I started reading your book, and I just got all these ideas. I was like, okay, this has to be in our lives, in our homes. And what if the home is actually a generator of structured water, to where, like, even in the hose bib, when I go to water my garden, it's the water that's coming out is structured. That being said, the first question, before I start listing out all the theories I have, the first question that comes to mind is I was the chapter that you had on turbulence. It seemed as though turbulence destructures water to some extent, maybe entirely. And when I think about the current way that plumbing is set up, you have all these 90 degree angles in the plumbing system, which every time it would hit that, I imagine it would create quite a bit of turbulence. And so if you could take just a minute and explain, like, what is the effect of turbulence on structured water?
Yes, I need less than 2 minutes because we can see in the experimental chamber, which sits on the stage of the microscope, we can see the easy growing. And if inadvertently or advertently we pick up the chamber and start moving it around a little bit, the easy breaks up. So effectively, that's the same as imparting turbulence on the system. And it breaks up. The extent to which it reforms, we never studied it because this wasn't really of so much interest. But definitely turbulence breaks up the easy, because the easy is a cohesive structure. You can imagine that any turbulence would destroy it. Minor turbulence, maybe not so much, but if you take the chamber, pick it up and shake it around, it's gone.
Okay, so then the one thought in my mind now is the human body, it moves, right? And we somehow are going, I imagine that we're maintaining some form of easy in the human body. And so I don't know that movement alone would destructure water. However, I am thinking about the pressurization of that system and whether or not that sort of the pressure that it's in within the tubes or whatever it might be. I wonder if that somehow is helping to counteract potential turbulence. Whereas with you, what you were saying, whenever you lifted up, that probably wasn't under pressure the same.
No pressure,
way.
But you know, I could imagine it's pretty violent.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of what's felt inside the chamber, inside the cell, things move around, but it's hard to imagine enough movement to disrupt the structure.
Because I'm just thinking of a plumbing system that is under pressure rather than it being more.
So we found experimentally that pressure builds easy water.
Oh, it does.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
And it was studying hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Do you know about hyperbaric? Yeah, it's high oxygen, high pressure. We found that both high oxygen and high pressure both build easy water.
Interesting.
For reasons that make sense, because the easy water is denser than liquid water. So if you take liquid water and put pressure on it, it'll turn the liquid water into easy water. That's what happens when you put pressure on. And also, easy water contains more oxygen. We found that. It's actually H3, it's not H2O anymore, it's H3O2, which has more oxygen per hydrogen than H2O. So if you add, put the patient under high oxygen, or any system under high oxygen, it creates more easy water.
Okay. So then a couple things come to mind. I want to come back to the plumbing system in a moment, but now I'm also thinking about windows in the home and natural light in the home, because most artificial indoor lights are not producing infrared radiation, at least not anymore. Maybe the incandescents that we used to have would produce some.
Well, they would, sure.
Yeah, but not LEDs, not what we have currently. So it's all visible light spectrum. Therefore, I mean, none of that light that is, if we don't have natural light coming in through like all these beautiful windows that you have here with this amazing view, if we don't have natural light coming into our home, we effectively are not building EZ. Now, one thing that is a critique of windows is that because they're, the soda lime, I think typically the soda lime glass, it tends to block the ultraviolet radiation coming through. That kind of bounces off. The infrared penetrates though, because of the longer wavelength. And so it seems like we are still potentially missing a valuable spectrum of sunlight that could be coming in. However, if we're just speaking strictly about easy water, then potentially just having lots of natural light in the home, even with regular windows, is fine. I've also heard of quartz glass as allowing full spectrum sun to come through, which your comment, originally I thought maybe it was actually better to not have something like quartz glass so you didn't have the ultraviolet coming through, but it sounds like having more full spectrum sun actually is better for easy than only a fraction of that spectrum, like in
Sure,
infrared.
yeah, and it harks back to what I've heard in Japan. They put cancer patients near a window facing east.
Yeah, morning sunlight.
Morning sunlight. Something about the morning sunlight, and it probably has something to do with the wavelengths that are generated just after sunrise. So they probably have something to say. And as you know, too much of the short wavelengths, we often always wear yellow glasses to prevent, on our computer screens, to prevent the blues and violets from coming through.
In the evening, yeah.
In the evening, yeah, to ensure better sleep. And I think that sort of thing needs to be taken into account. Yeah, in some ways, the incandescent lights were superior in terms of health benefits than the modern lights. So absolutely, this would be good to take into account.
Okay. So then jumping back to the plumbing system, one thought that came to mind was if I wanted a plumbing system in the home that would, I'm trying to I'm trying to generate structured or easy water in the home. And so the first step is to create it. Ideally, we could create it in one source in the home rather than having a source like a source that is generating water at each fixture for simplicity.
Sure.
And so in my mind, it would be probably next to the whole house water filter. So the next question I have for you is water filtration and EZ. So you mentioned that exclusion zone tends to remove contaminants or particles from the bulk of the water, making it cleaner. So I could see the applications for water filtration actually in that. I don't know if there's any systems that use EZ water to filter rather than using the traditional membrane filtration or charcoal, something like that. However, aside from the filtration, do you find that water that is pre-filtered versus water that maybe has higher mineral content or higher, particulates, or maybe even city water that has chemicals or pharmaceuticals or things, just contaminants of any kind, in the water? Do you find that contaminated water tends to not structure as well as filtered water? Or
We haven't studied that in particular, but I can point you into a direction that I think would be useful for you. I have in this house right here, the incoming water line has a vortex. It's a pipe that has a helical interior to it,
like rifling of a barrel, like of a gun.
Yeah, I guess it would be like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a gun person, so I don't know very much about that. But there's a guy from British Columbia who told me about it, and he actually sent me a few samples. So there's a sample we inserted it in series with the incoming line. So the water comes in from the city, it goes through this vortex thing, and then it continues into the line to my house. And my son, who illustrates my books, put one in his water line too. Now, I'm not sure if it does the trick, but that's where I'd start if I were you.
So is there a way to test? That kind of goes to my next question. Is there a way to test whether or not the water coming out of the fixtures is structured?
Yeah, there is a test. And we use the test, but I'm not sure if it would work in a flowing system. We measure the absorption of light at a wavelength of 270 nanometers. It turns out that if the water absorbs light at 270 nanometers, it has structure. If it absorbs it strongly, it has a lot of structure. If it absorbs it weakly, it doesn't have much structure. If there's no absorption, there's no structure. It's not quantitative, but it's qualitative. But it works in many different circumstances. Now, in the case of these vortices, it might depend on continuous flow, because it might be, if the water does actually get structured by this helical kind of thing, the structure may vanish after a small amount of time. So it might be, I'm not saying it is, but it might. So it means it has to be tested whether structure is retained, or does it have to be flowing in order for the structure to be retained. That's what I would spend if I were doing what you're doing. I'd spend a good deal of time on this, because it's really promising. Mm-hmm. That would be a really simple way of doing it.
Excellent. And and maybe we can talk more about this offline. But I'm curious what kind of devices or what way you measure the 270 nanometer absorption rate.
It's very simple. It's a spectrometer. It's in every chemistry laboratory.
Okay.
So you could easily acquire one.
Got it. Okay. 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 So it sounds like you're saying that there's a mechanical mechanism and an energetic mechanism for structuring water, whether it's sunlight energetically structuring water or this vortexing, which can mechanically structure water. And it sounds like the energetic mechanism for structuring water can have lasting effects on easy, where it's remaining as easy for a period of time. We don't know exactly how long that might last, but a period of time. However, the vortexing or the mechanical method of structuring water, we don't know actually how,
Correct.
if it can hold
Correct.
structure. Okay.
It might be able to.
So then that leads me to my next question, which is an idea that that came to me while I was reading your book, The Fourth Phase of Water. So it seems like a electrical charge has the ability to structure water as well. And what that would be is negative charge. And my understanding is that the earth, I mean, we all do like, for anyone who does grounding, like barefoot outside, you're connecting to the earth, which is negatively charged, and you're passing positive ions, I guess, to the earth, and that helps you sort of discharge any sort of buildup in your body, which also makes me think about water as well, having those negative charges and a similar kind of effect. But if the earth is negatively charged, then just similar to how I would bond a footer, to like a foundation of a home, or bond any sort of pool equipment or metal things around a pool, in order to, or you would ground, the wiring in your home. My mind went to, man, we probably should not be using, even aside from the plastic, like from a contaminant or toxic perspective, to like water absorption of some of those microplastics and things like that, and forever chemicals. Even if we ignore that, it seems like the plastic piping is probably not the optimal tube type for water structuring. In my mind, it would be a conductive metal piping, like copper, for example, and then we would wrap a grounding wire around the metal piping at intervals of, I don't know, we'd have to test. But then if we grounded that copper piping, then you would create sort of a loop, I guess, between the pipe and the earth, and that grounding, it seems at least it's one step in the right direction to creating a good environment for structured water. Maybe it's not created in the pipe, but at least it's more likely to be maintained in a plumbing system like that. I'll pause there. There's more to it, but I'll pause there for a moment to is that in line?
I think you're right on. I mean, the grounding or earthing, as they call it in Europe, has been demonstrated for many years to be beneficial to all aspects of health. There are lots of theories as to why it works or how it works. I think it's simply a matter of transferring the negative charge from the earth to regions in your body that are somehow devoid or short of a negative charge. And you need this negative charge for health in every cell in your body. And at the same time, it's a good vehicle for withdrawing the positive charge, which neutralizes the important negativity, as you mentioned. So if I were doing it, I would absolutely, this would be one of the fundamental aspects of what I would put into the structure, have some area that's grounded, that's earthed. And anybody who has an opportunity to step on it or sleep in it or whatever, they're going to be better off.
Well, specifically, I was speaking about grounding the pipes, but yes, I do in all my designs, as well. As a side note, we have grounded floors throughout the house, so that way you don't have to go outside to.
But you have to avoid wearing shoes with leather soles.
With leather soles?
Yeah, or insulator.
It isn't. Well, obviously the rubber or plastics or insulators.
Yeah.
Leather is also insulator?
Leather also. Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Take off your shoes.
Okay.
But
walk barefoot in the house.
Yeah.
Okay. So then going back to, so it seems like probably it would be better, because in your experiments you used filtered water, pure water mostly, when you were observing.
Oh yeah.
So in my mind, I think it would be safe to say we should have a water filtration system. I am curious about pH balance of water. Is there a specific pH balance that you found that you work with?
Alkaline water has been used specifically or particularly in Japan for a very long time. High pH, which translates to negative charge. So not everybody realizes that we published a paper indicating or showing that if you have a high pH, it really does have net negative charge. If this has a pH of 8 or 9, it has net negative charge in this water, and vice versa for low pH. If you have any gastrointestinal issue from your mouth to your anus, they will prescribe and pay for drinking alkaline water because it's proved to be effective. And you can imagine the government is not enthusiastic about paying for anything unless it really works. They tested it. There's been some talk about alkaline water as drinking it for a long term has some negative effects, but I'm not aware of it. I used to drink that stuff myself, but until there was renovation here and we had difficulty restoring the apparatus to produce the alkaline water. But it's worth looking into the Japanese studies, because there have been many studies on this and finding out about alkaline water. So could be something that you might want to put in your plans.
Excellent. Okay, so if we have I'm going through it linearly now. We have the whole home water filtration system, potential alkalinity, which sort of predisposes it to that negative charge, and EZ being negatively charged, it seems conducive. And then we have the negatively charged earth, connecting that to the piping, grounding that, so it creates a habitable environment for this water to proliferate. But then we still need like that source, that energy source, which to me, I can't think of a better source than sunlight. And so in my mind, the thought that came to me was you have the water at the source coming in, whether it's well or city, whatever it is, you have it coming in through the source, copper pipe. And then I thought, how awesome would it be to just have it come up through like a glass encasement, window, almost like a window, but it would be sort of instead of two pane where it's like really close, you kind of widen that gap, and then put like a spiral glass connector pipe that allows that water to move through. In a way, I guess you're vortexing it, as well as having the glass pipe, which is exposed to sunlight coming through the home. And if you had to do that for long enough, I guess based on what you had mentioned, it should be a long enough flow that it sits in there for at least 3 minutes. It's exposed for potentially 3 minutes before it exits into the remainder of the house. In theory, I know that the glass can reject some UV light, but in theory, at least at the very minimum, we're getting the infrared light, which should be structuring that water. Is that in line with?
Well, you need a surface in doing what you're doing. You'd have the glass, but you need a nucleating surface to grow the EZ. And I don't know what surface you'd use. We use the polymer Naphion. We use it a lot, but I understand it's toxic, so you might not want to use that. But there are lots of surfaces that you could use, that are not toxic. For example, ghee, clarified butter, forms, as from our experience, the largest EZs of anything, 1 millimeter, typically. And obviously, this is a food that people eat all the time, so it's not toxic. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to bring up the point that it's not just exposing it to infrared energy from sunlight. It's that you need a surface to begin to nucleate the growth of EZ.
And would the inside of copper piping be an acceptable
Probably
surface?
not. No. We found that we studied EZs growing next to metals, and I wouldn't call it anomalous, but next to metals, we find that we get a positively charged EZ.
Oh.
We don't talk about this a lot because it's only under special circumstances that the positively charged EZ forms. It's almost always negative, but next to metals, it's positive. So you wouldn't want positivity to build in your water supply. You want negativity to build. So I'd say that probably copper is not a good idea.
Yeah, well, even if we do structure it at a source, but then flow that structured water through copper piping, if it's generating a positive EZ zone, then that's sort of counteracting the negative EZ zone that we're putting into it, right?
Yeah, it might. All of this, needs to be tested. I can't remember if we studied copper particularly. We studied other metals, and they definitely build positively charged EZs. So yeah, copper might not be the best idea.
Do any building materials come to mind that you've seen or studied or have tested yourself that is a good substrate or a good surface that EZ can build up? Like one that comes to mind is stone. I'm almost wondering if maybe there is an open-aired structuring mechanism that the water flows to it, and then it's stone. Maybe it's a vortexing, element that structures it. Because if that's the case, I'm almost thinking that the structuring should happen at the fixture at that point, because we could make something unique at a fixture that structures it just before it comes out.
Yeah, possibly. I think there are different stones. I'm trying to. We examined rose quartz was one that built EZ. We studied. We haven't published it, but we discovered that we explored a few stones, and that was one that seemed to work to build EZ. And I assume, I can't remember, but I assume it was negatively charged EZ because almost all of them are negatively charged. So rose quartz would do. And I may deviate for a moment because there's something else that could be useful. The Romans suffered from heat, right? They wanted to cool off. And what they did is they built a wall of some kind of stone, and the water would pass over the stone. They didn't know it, but the water would get structured from the stone. It would become EZ water. EZ water doesn't radiate heat. Ordinary substances, high temperature, you receive infrared energy that emanates from them, but EZ water
It absorbs it.
Almost nothing, almost no infrared emanates from EZ.
Because it's absorbing it. Is that why?
It absorbs it. It doesn't generate it. We have experimental evidence for this, but it's sort of almost obvious. So if it doesn't generate any heat, it feels cool. It feels like a refrigerated wall. That's how they kept cool. And that's something to emulate, I think.
Yeah, I'm starting to get ideas of how to incorporate systems like that. So at the fixtures, we mentioned the mechanical way of structuring water through vortexing, energetic way of structuring water through infrared radiation, UV radiation, things like that. I guess in theory, I wonder if sound could even structure water. Have you seen or anything in that spectrum, sound?
I bet it does, because if sound is good for health, then it probably structures water, because that's the central entity that provokes good health, is buildup of EZ water in your cells. So yes, I don't know of any direct evidence, but I bet it does. Needs to be tested.
Sure. So then it doesn't seem like we would need because in my thought, or in my theory, and we've sort of debunked a few of those things, which I think is great. But I was thinking we would need laminar flow fixtures at the end point of each, at the termination point of each of the pipes. So that way the laminar flow would sort of allow for the water that is structured to come out in a structured way. Otherwise, if we do a lot of aeration, that turbulence could just destructure it right at the end.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I think I'm now going in a slightly different direction where we're not structuring it before it goes into the pipes necessarily. We're probably structuring it at the fixture point. And if we do that, then I don't know that we necessarily need laminar flow fixture. We're probably having an entirely different fixture type system anyway. it's probably custom, at least until a product different products are made. So the last question I have is regarding ductwork. I think a lot of people are very afraid of mold nowadays, and as we should be. And one of the places that tends to collect is in the air ducts of a building. And if charge creates easy and easy propels dirt or contaminants of some kind. I can't help but wonder is if we were to use a conductive duct like metal, and then ground that duct, then you would get a negatively charged duct effectively, which in theory that charge similar. I'm thinking in terms of fluid dynamics more so than anything. I know that there's still moisture in the air, but I'm more just kind of throwing this idea out there to see if you have any insight at all. But the thought crosses my mind that there potentially, I guess, there would be a reduced buildup of contaminants building up on the walls of the duct that then would turn into an organic substrate that could grow or harbor, mold production if humidity were to build up there. So the goal, I guess, is just to keep the inside of the ducts as clean as possible, which obviously you have your filters on the input. But I was thinking if you were to something as simple as grounding, a conductive duct, do you know if that could have any potential, in theory at least?
As you were discussing it, I had to move out of this house for 16 months for mold remediation. A couple of years ago. What a hassle that was. So I'm concerned about. I would think the opposite. I would think if you positively charged the duct, that would inhibit the growth of living organisms, which depend on negative charge.
Oh, okay.
Need to be tested,
sure.
but yeah. We as humans, for example, we avoid positive charge. Positive charge is just not good for us. It's too bad the nomenclature is as it is. It would be nice if Benjamin Franklin called electrons positive instead of negative. Then everything would fit very well. But he didn't. So if you want to inhibit life, I'd say add positively charge the ducts. That's where I'd start. Of course, you have to test it and see how it works. But I bet there are people who have tested positively or negatively charged surfaces on mold, and the effect on mold growth.
Mm-hmm. I think of clean rooms, and I think of
what do they? Yeah,
I know that they. I don't know the details, but I know that they do something in this realm of charge. But I need to look into it a little bit more.
Yeah,
this is like on the way here, I had this, this
No,
thought.
It's a fantastic idea. Really important.
I want to share what this podcast is all about. You see, I'm on this journey to design the healthiest home in the world. That's why I sit down with brilliant minds across biology, medicine, design, and more, all with one goal in mind: a home tuned to human biology. This is where I brainstorm, where we explore what it really means to create a home that heals. If that sounds like something you care about, hit subscribe, and let's see where this goes.